When did someone give you an ultimatum? By 17, I had already raised 8 of my mom's adopted children. My mom was driven by social image. Every adoption meant another newspaper article and thousands of Facebook likes. The problem was, she never wanted to actually parent. That became my responsibility. It began when I was 9, when she brought home her first baby, a premature infant from Guatemala, needing constant care. "You're so mature for your age," she said at 3 a.m., handing me a feeding schedule. "This will teach you responsibility." I was packing lunches for the kids when she called a family meeting and spread photos on the table. 3 babies from Ukraine, all under 2, one with cerebral palsy. "Mom, I can't do this anymore," I said, voice trembling. "I need to finish school. I've already missed 47 days this year." She tilted her head. "Are you saying you won't help these innocent children?" "I'm saying I'm 17 and exhausted." That night, she came into my room. "Fine, don't help." She showed me their medical files. "But either you care for them," she said quietly, "or they'll suffer. Your choice." I felt my head spin. She knew I couldn't let babies suffer and would always choose them over myself. The next morning, I tested her. Instead of staying home with Vance, who had the flu, I went to first period, just one class. When I got back, I found my 4-year-old brother Danny shaking on the kitchen floor. His blood sugar was 32. Mom sat on the couch scrolling on her phone. "Oh no," she said without looking up. "I completely forgot his insulin schedule. Guess that's what happens when you choose to be selfish." Later that day, I tried telling my school counselor. My phone buzzed before I finished. Mom's text: "Gigi's inhaler seems missing. Help me look when you get home." I ran back. Mom was holding the inhaler, studying it like she'd never seen one before. "Found it," she said cheerfully. "Accidents happen when you're not here to prevent them, don't they?" That evening, I walked in on something worse. Mom had the talking age kids, sitting in a circle. In her sweet voice she said, "Remember, if anyone asks, I'm the best mommy ever. Say anything else, and they'll take you away and you'll never see each other again." 6-year-old Gigi cried. "But you're mean to Talia." Mom's face went cold. "Talia wants to abandon you. I'm the only one keeping this family together. Now, what do we say if someone asks?" The children whispered, "You're the best mommy ever." She made them repeat it 5 more times before bed. I stopped fighting. After that, if she wanted me to give everything, I would. I dropped out of school. Not officially, just stopped going. When I did show up, I brought toddlers. "These are mine," I told my chemistry teacher when she asked why. I sold Mom's jewelry for formula and saved every receipt. I used her credit card for prescriptions, letting fraud flags pop up when a teenager bought $400 of medicine. 2 weeks later, she announced she was adopting premature twins with serious heart defects. "They need surgery within 6 months or they won't survive," she said at dinner, as if discussing the weather. "The adoption agency needs proof of a full-time caregiver." She looked at me. "I told them you deferred college." The next morning, she left for a 5-day charity retreat in the Bahamas. She left a note on the counter with the twins' feeding schedule. One baby was on a heart monitor that beeped when his oxygen dropped below 90. It dropped every hour. Then Francis, our 3-year-old, had a seizure in the bathtub while I tried to cool the babies. I called 911, holding a baby under each arm while Francis convulsed on the floor. The paramedics found me sobbing, covered in vomit with 14 kids. The twins' monitor shrieking. "Where are your parents?" they asked. I showed them Mom's text from the Bahamas. "Handle it, that's what you're for. Don't call again. I'm in a meditation session." The hospital social worker pulled me aside the next day. She held a file 3 inches thick. 47 ER visits in 2 years. "All brought by you. Your mom was never present." "She's getting an award tomorrow," I told her. "Mother of the Decade." Televised. Her face was grim. "We've been building this case for months. Your teacher, the paramedics, the pharmacy, even your neighbors. Everyone saw but couldn't prove it until now." She paused. "Did you know she's collecting $11,000 a month in adoption subsidies?" I felt my knees buckle. 11,000. while I sold her jewelry for formula. That's when I realized the system wouldn't give me justice. Mom forgot one thing. When you take everything from someone, they have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I walked to the hospital cafeteria after Althea left and bought the cheapest coffee. The twins were still in the NICU. I sat there an hour, watching steam rise from the cup, and made my choice. I was done protecting Mom. I found Althea's card in my pocket and called her from the lobby. She picked up on the first ring. I told her I'd help with everything. She exhaled deeply. She'd been waiting. We set a meeting for 9 a.m. the next morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out the shoebox under my bed where I'd kept everything. Receipts from selling jewelry for formula, texts she sent from vacations while kids were sick, photos of me alone at hospitals. My hands shook as I sorted them by date. 3 years of proof. I made copies and sealed the originals in a plastic bag. The next morning, I got the older kids breakfast and told them I had a doctor's appointment. I met Althea in the hospital conference room. She had someone with her, Fletcher Kent from CPS. He asked about each child's medical needs and wrote everything down. He explained they needed more evidence to move quickly. Mom's public image was strong. We need something nobody can argue with. I showed them everything on my phone, photos, screenshots of her texts, videos of crying children. Fletcher's face darkened. He asked if he could make copies. I handed him the phone. Afterward, I went to our neighbor Minnie's house. She'd seen everything for 20 years. I asked if she'd be an emergency contact for the kids. She didn't hesitate. She'd been watching ambulances pull up for years, wondering when someone would act. 2 days later, Mom came back early from the Bahamas, with duty-free bags. She used that fake sweet voice she always did after being gone. She played with my hair, promising a nice trip after her award ceremony. But she could tell something was different in me. That evening, she gathered the younger kids. I stood in the kitchen doorway recording on my phone. She made them sit in a circle and practice saying, "Mommy takes good care of them." Gigi started crying because she didn't want to lie. Mom's voice turned cold. She said Gigi might have to live somewhere else if she couldn't remember her lines. The kids got scared and repeated louder. The next day, I went to school for the first time in 2 weeks. I found Dean McCormick in his classroom. I asked if he'd document the times I brought toddlers. He showed me a folder, dates of every absence, photos of me doing homework with babies on my lap. He said he'd write any statement I needed. People were finally seeing. Mom had been careful with her image, but forgot other people had eyes. They saw me at pharmacies, at food banks, with sick babies at 3 a.m. Fletcher called that afternoon. "We're building the case, but it will take time. The system moves slowly." Meanwhile, the twins needed surgery soon. Mom planned her award ceremony like nothing was wrong. I knew this was just the start of a long fight, but at least I wasn't alone. The next morning, I went to my school counselor, Charity Neely. She pulled out a thick folder with my name. 3 years of attendance records, notes about every time I fell asleep in class, every assignment with baby handprints. She'd been tracking it all. She said she'd already written a statement for CPS. I took photos of every page. That afternoon, I went to the fire station on Maple Street. Roy Farmer recognized me immediately. He and his partner showed me photos of my house. Mom's car in the driveway while I loaded kids into ambulances. Timestamps at 2 a.m., 4 a.m. They'd filed reports for 2 years about her absence. They gave me copies of their reports and promised to testify. The next day, I met Cornelius Bush at Legal Aid. He explained that using Mom's credit cards could be fraud over $4,000. He said I could face charges, but if I cooperated fully with CPS, they'd focus on the bigger issue, child endangerment. He helped me document every purchase formula, medicine, diapers, nebulizer supplies, glucose tablets. I had most receipts. He'd argue I had no choice. That evening, I called Fiona Bailey from one of Mom's clippings. She'd written 6 glowing articles about Mom. She sounded skeptical but agreed to meet for proof. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I started packing bags for the kids. Medications, records, clothes, stuffed animals. I labeled each with their name and my number. Danny's diabetes supplies filled one bag. The twins' heart meds took another. Gigi's inhaler and allergy pens. Fantisha's seizure medication. 14 bags lined up by the door, breaking my heart. At 7 a.m., while making breakfast, Fletcher called. They were planning everything around Mom's award ceremony in 2 weeks. She'll be on stage when we move in. The media will be there. The truth will come out. That afternoon, Mom changed all the locks on her bedroom door. She moved every medication into her room and put a padlock on the door. She told everyone I'd been forgetful lately and couldn't be trusted with important things. Then she posted on Facebook about how exhausted she was, how I'd been acting strange and aggressive, how hard it was to care for 14 special needs children alone. Her followers flooded the comments with hearts and prayers. Some suggested I sounded like a troubled teen who didn't appreciate everything she did. That night, one twin's oxygen monitor started beeping at 2 a.m. The backup battery had died and the main unit was failing. His oxygen fell to 82, then 79. I ran to Mom's door, but it was locked. I could hear the TV on inside. I pounded on the door and yelled that the baby needed help. She didn't answer. I called Minnie and she came over in her nightgown. Together we moved the twin to another monitor and got his levels back up. I took pictures of the broken monitor and the locked door and recorded the TV playing while we worked. Minnie stayed until morning to help watch the monitors. 2 days later, Fletcher called. The legal process was slow. Too many cases, too few workers. He needed a detailed video statement from me, covering each child's medical condition, Mom's pattern of leaving, the coaching sessions, the locked medications, and the money. That night I spent 3 hours talking to my phone camera, describing every child's needs, every hospital visit, every time Mom left us alone, every threat, every time she chose Facebook over feeding schedules. My voice broke when I talked about finding Danny on the floor, Frantisha's seizure, and the twins nearly dying. I uploaded the video to 3 cloud services and sent Fletcher the links. The next morning, Fiona Bailey called back. She'd reviewed the evidence but wanted more. Verified timestamps, third-party confirmation, official documents. I spent the day gathering everything. Mom's Instagram posts from the Bahamas, with locations and times that matched ER admissions, Facebook photos of her at Gulles while I was in the hospital, credit card statements showing resort purchases while medical bills stacked up. I sent all this plus paramedics' reports and social worker notes to Fiona. An hour later she called. Her voice had changed. She believed me. That morning I went through the mail pile, while everyone slept. Among bills and donation thank you cards, I found a thick envelope from the state adoption agency. My hands shook as I opened it and saw subsidy payment statements spanning 3 years, $11,000 deposited into Mom's account every month. I photographed every page. She'd received more than $400,000, while I'd sold her jewelry for formula and begged pharmacists to accept installments. I stuffed the papers back in the envelope when I heard her bedroom door open. That afternoon, while I gave the twins breathing treatments, Mom posted on Facebook about how worried she was about me, claiming I was jealous of the attention she gave the younger children. Her followers attacked me in the comments, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Notifications kept buzzing until I made my accounts private. That night I packed a bag with backup medications and inhalers and walked it to Minnie's. She hid the supplies in her hall closet, without questions. Having emergency meds there felt like a small necessary control. 2 days later, Mom called a family meeting and said she was considering placing the twins in medical foster care so they could get specialized attention. The kids cried instantly. Vance grabbed my leg so hard it hurt. I promised I wouldn't let them be split up, though I didn't know how I'd stop it. Mom smiled over their heads like she'd won. Cornelius Bush, from Legal Aid, called the next morning about the credit card charges. He warned I could face fraud charges but said full transparency would help. We spent 3 hours making a spreadsheet listing every purchase with receipts proving they were for the children's medical needs. He said a restitution plan would show the court I wasn't stealing. I went to the CPS office that afternoon and spent 4 hours writing a sworn statement with dates, witnesses, and details about each child's condition. Fletcher said it was the most detailed report he'd seen and that it would help accelerate the case. 3 days later, Mom staged a charity photo op in our front yard. I stood in the doorway and recorded as she posed with the kids for 20 minutes. After the photographer left, she pulled out her phone and scrolled while Danny sat on the grass. His hand began shaking, and he told her he felt funny. She didn't look up until the photographer returned and mentioned it. The footage looked bad, but any good lawyer could explain it away. She'd claim she was tired or checking schedules. I needed something undeniable. I remembered our shared family phone tracking account. I logged in and pulled up Mom's location history for the past year. My heart raced as I matched timestamps to my calendar. She was in the Bahamas during 5 ER visits, at a spa during Danny's diabetic crisis, at parties and restaurants during 8 other emergencies. Each match lined up with hospital records. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Fletcher and Fiona. The next morning, Minnie brought a notarized statement describing everything she'd witnessed over 2 years. Hearing the kids coach through the wall, ambulances pulling up twice a week, finding Vance alone in her yard, while Mom's car sat in our driveway. She had dates and times. I hugged her and cried. That day, Dean called me to his classroom and handed a manila folder with every absent slip, tardy notice, and photos he'd taken of me asleep at my desk with Gigi on my lap. Charity arrived with her stack of papers documenting the 47 days I'd missed this year, and every time I'd brought toddlers to school. They'd been building a timeline that matched the hospital records. Dean showed photos from 3 months earlier when I'd brought Danny to chemistry, because his blood sugar was unstable. Charity's notes included times she'd found me in the bathroom, calming Vance during an asthma attack, and once changing a twin's diaper in the counseling office. They agreed to send copies to Fletcher and the judge. Althea called, sounding frustrated. The hospital's lawyers were reviewing her statement, but wanted to remove specific medical details due to privacy laws. That could push back the emergency hearing by at least a week. Releasing full records required court orders. Even though I'd brought the kids in, Mom was their legal guardian on paper, and that meant more paperwork and more waiting. When I got home, Mom sat at the kitchen table with the receipts I'd hidden spread before her. She didn't yell, she spoke quietly, reminding me the award ceremony was in 4 days, and outlining what would happen if I embarrassed her. She'd already consulted lawyers about a restraining order and had credit card statements showing my charges. She said the judge would believe a mother protecting her children from a troubled teenager, and vowed to make sure I never saw the kids again if I ruined her moment. She threatened to tell them I'd abandoned them and used them for attention. The next morning, I bought a cheap, prepaid phone with cash I'd saved from returning bottles. I spent hours uploading every photo, video, and screenshot to 3 cloud accounts, created new emails, and wrote passwords down for Althea and Fletcher. I mailed a USB drive with everything to Cornelius's office. If Mom took my phone or deleted files, copies would exist where she couldn't reach them. 2 days later, CPS scheduled a home visit. Mom scrubbed the house, organized medical supplies into labeled bins, and hung drawings. She spent 3 hours coaching the kids on what to say and threatened with losing her stuffed animal if she didn't smile. She told Danny that mentioning hunger or sickness would get blamed on me and land me in jail. While she drilled answers, I hid the twins' parent monitor behind books so it would pick up audio from where the social worker would sit. When the caseworker arrived, the house looked perfect and the kids recited their lines. The caseworker asked specific questions and wrote notes. Danny recited that Mom always remembered his insulin even though his hands trembled. The monitor caught some audio, but missed visual signs, like Mom pinching Vance when he started to say something off script. The worker seemed suspicious, but without direct evidence of coaching or threats. She couldn't remove the kids immediately. 2 hours after the visit, Mom celebrated with pizza and a movie. Later, Danny collapsed in the hallway, His blood sugar had dropped to 28 and he was barely conscious. I pulled glucose tablets from my emergency stash, got 3 into him, photographed the meter reading, and gave him juice and crackers while logging everything. Mom was in her room on the phone bragging about the visit. I handled the crisis alone, as I always had. The next morning Cornelius called to say he'd filed for an emergency protective order on my behalf. He argued Mom's threats, saying she'd keep me from the kids if I embarrassed her, amounted to witness intimidation. The judge granted a temporary order preventing Mom from blocking my access to the children or their medical care. That night at 2 a.m. I woke to texts from Mom claiming she'd lost her keys, and the door was locked. I ran downstairs and found myself locked out while Mom stood at the window with a small smile and mouthed, "Oops," before walking away. I called the police and showed them the protective order. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. Mom answered the door in pajamas, acting confused. She said the lock was broken and she'd been fixing it. The officers did a welfare check and called the situation a civil family dispute they couldn't intervene in. They left at 2:45 a.m., and I sat on the porch with no way inside. I called Fletcher repeatedly and left voicemails about hearing the twins' oxygen monitors beeping inside. I could hear the familiar alarms and their levels dropping through the window. Fletcher finally answered at 5 a.m., sounding exhausted, but concerned. He promised to move things as fast as he could, but said no judge would sign emergency orders until business hours. He told me to document everything, record what I could hear, take photos of myself locked out. So I sat on the cold porch, recording the alarms from inside my own home, while the children I'd raised were in danger and I couldn't help them. Dawn came around 6 hours, and Mom finally opened the door. Acting surprised to see me, she said the lock must have fixed itself and went back inside while I rushed to stabilize the twins and get breakfast for everyone. Mom stayed in her room, posting on social media about how hard it was being a single mother. Later that morning, Minnie sent me a link to an article Fiona Bailey had published, questioning how charities vetted award recipients. She didn't name Mom outright, but the piece referenced adoption subsidies and repeated medical emergencies that could only fit our situation. The comment section exploded. Some defended Mom as a saint. Others began connecting discrepancies in her posts. I screenshotted everything before Mom could see it and kept making lunches while my phone buzzed nonstop. An hour later, Fletcher called while I changed diapers. His voice was excited. A FOIA request had confirmed the $11,000 monthly adoption subsidy deposits. Fiona's contacts at the state agency had independently verified it, making it an official public record. I nearly dropped the phone when Fletcher told me Mom's total over 8 years was approaching $1 million. Jeremy Wolf, a CPS supervisor, had reviewed the materials and authorized an emergency removal plan. It only needed a judge's signature. They'd never seen such complete documentation, and the children were clearly in immediate danger from the medical records alone. I hung up and saw Mom watching me from the doorway with that cold smile. That afternoon, she called the kids into the living room and announced she would live stream the award ceremony with everyone present. A celebration of family, she called it. The younger children clapped because she'd promised ice cream, but I noticed how she was framing herself as a victim of jealous attacks online. Her followers rallied behind hashtags defending her and attacking critics. She spent hours coaching the kids on what to say if anyone questioned them. 2 nights before the ceremony, knowing it might be my last chance with all the kids together, I gathered the older ones in my room after Mom went to bed. I taught them our emergency code word, butterfly, which meant stay calm and trust me if something scary happened. I packed go bags with favorite stuffed animals and blankets that smelled like home. Danny clutched his dinosaur and asked if we were leaving. I told him maybe, but I'll always love you. The next morning, Mom cornered me in the kitchen and offered me a spot on stage if I'd smile and support the family. The manipulation was obvious after everything I'd documented. I told her I'd think about it while secretly texting Fletcher to confirm the removal timeline. He said everything was set and Judge Melody Painter would review the case. That afternoon, Charity Neely dropped by with paperwork about getting my GED and programs for youth aging out of care. I'd never planned for a future beyond surviving, but she showed how I could take online classes and work while earning a diploma. Mom saw her car and came out sweetly. Charity said she was checking on a former student, and Mom's face tightened before she went back inside. That evening, Fletcher called. Judge Painter had scheduled an emergency hearing for the morning of the award ceremony. The timing was perfect. Mom would be focused on her image and less able to interfere. The hearing was set for 8:00 a.m. The ceremony was at noon. I felt sick thinking about the kids being removed, but I also knew they needed proper medical care. The night before, Mom found the baby monitor I'd hidden in the living room and smashed it with a hammer, then posted a video accusing me of inappropriately recording the children and claiming I needed mental health help. Her followers rallied, though some questioned why she reacted so strongly if she had nothing to hide. People began digging through old posts and finding inconsistencies. She deleted comments and blocked users while the kids watched TV. I texted Minnie. She arrived with soup and stayed up with me, watching the house while I slept for 2 hours. At 3:00 a.m. she made me eat despite my nerves and reminded me that I was saving my siblings' lives. At 6:30 a.m. Cornelius showed up with paperwork. He had me go through every credit card charge while Minnie tended the kids, writing down which child needed which purchase. The diversion program forms were complicated. He explained that full transparency would help the judge see I used the funds for medical needs, not personal gain. My hands shook as I signed the last page. Minnie drove me to the courthouse. I threw up twice in the parking lot from nerves. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and harsh fluorescent lights. Mom's lawyer was already there. Fletcher waved me to sit behind him and reviewed the order of proceedings. When Judge Painter entered, she looked tired but composed. I was sworn in and spent 2 hours answering questions about every child's medical needs. Danny's insulin, Gigi's inhaler, the twins' monitors, Frantisha's seizure meds. My voice cracked describing Danny on the floor with a blood sugar of 32, but I kept going. Fletcher presented the evidence. Photos of me in the hospital at 3 a.m. Texts from Mom in the Bahamas telling me to handle everything. Stacks of medical records. He read statements from Roy, Dean, and Charity documenting my absences to care for sick children. Even Mom's lawyer seemed uncomfortable, as Fletcher showed location data proving Mom was at spas and vacations during emergencies. Judge Painter's expression hardened with each piece of evidence. She didn't wait for closing arguments. She ordered immediate 72-hour medical holds for every child, emergency placements in homes with medical training, and froze Mom's access pending investigation. Mom arrived as the judge signed the orders. Her face flashed through colors, but she kept a smile and whispered that I'd destroyed the family, gripping my arm hard enough to leave marks. Outside the courthouse, she spoke to reporters, calling the removals routine medical evaluations and insisting it was a misunderstanding. Her ability to lie calmly was chilling. The removal at noon was worse than I'd imagined. CPS and police filled the house while the kids cried and clung to me. They divided the children by medical needs. The twins went to one specialized home. The others split between 2 more. Danny wouldn't let go of my leg until a worker promised he could keep his dinosaur. I rode in a separate van, watching my siblings driven away. At the award ceremony, 3 hours later, Mom arrived in a designer dress, acting as if nothing had happened. Fiona confronted her on the red carpet. Mom laughed it off, calling the reports jealous exaggeration. But under pressure, her answers began to contradict themselves, and other reporters pressed harder. That night, a counselor at a youth transitional program met me with intake forms. The room was small, with 2 beds and a dresser. It smelled like cleaner and old carpet. I sat on a thin mattress filling out paperwork and felt numb. The counselor left a folder with rules and meal times and said someone would check on me in the morning. I lay on the bed thinking of the kids, scared and separated, but finally receiving medical care. Cornelius later told me he'd negotiated a diversion deal, community service and restitution instead of criminal charges. The relief hit me hard. The judge understood I was trying to save lives. Over the next week, hospital exams confirmed what the records suggested: medical neglect, missed medications, untreated conditions. The twins were scheduled for emergency heart surgery within days. The documentation was so clear that even Mom's high-priced lawyer couldn't dismiss it. Mom went nuclear on social media the next morning, calling it government overreach and mobilizing followers to protest outside the CPS building. A GoFundMe for legal fees raised $8,000 that day. Fletcher reassured me the kids were in secure locations and Mom didn't know where. The protest wouldn't change the medical facts. I deleted my social accounts and focused on getting through the youth program days. 2 weeks later, Fletcher drove me to a supervised visit in a public park. My hands trembled the whole ride. When the van pulled up, the kids screamed my name. Danny ran into my arms, and Gigi and the others piled on in a huge hug that knocked me to the grass. I'd brought snacks and the medical charts I'd kept for years. The social worker let me give each child a treat. Dai's blood sugar was stable, and his cheeks had color. The twins looked healthier and breathed more easily. For 1 hour we played, and it felt nearly normal. When we left, Gigi wouldn't let go until I promised I'd see them again soon. Fletcher briefed me after. CPS had placed the twins together with a retired pediatric nurse and the other children with experienced medical foster parents. No relatives could take them. Mom had isolated herself and cut off family. The foster homes appeared caring. They'd already scheduled missed appointments and therapy. A month later, I sat through a preliminary hearing in my only decent outfit from the youth program. Judge Painter reviewed evidence and ordered Mom to undergo psychological evaluation and parenting classes before reunification would be considered. She froze the adoption subsidies pending review and limited Mom to supervised visits every other week for 2 hours. Mom's lawyer argued for immediate return, but the judge said the neglect was too severe. I started GED classes the next week and picked up shifts in the hospital cafeteria. The work was hard and the pay was low, but it was honest. I saved every penny in an envelope under my mattress. Seeing the hospital windows reminded me of the twins, but at least they were getting care. Fiona published another article about the children's medical needs and the foster family's expenses. Donations and supplies began arriving. It felt strange that strangers cared so much, but I was grateful the kids were getting what they needed. 3 months after that first hospital night, I moved into a transitional studio apartment with housing help. I began therapy twice weekly with a counselor who specialized in family trauma. She helped me name what happened, abuse and exploitation, instead of excusing it. We drafted a victim impact statement for court. Writing it took weeks because I kept minimizing what I'd endured. The therapist reminded me repeatedly that it wasn't normal or acceptable. At the next supervised park visit, the kids played on real playground equipment. Dai's diabetes was controlled. Gigi hadn't had an asthma attack in weeks. The twins were scheduled for surgery and doctors were hopeful. The little ones who couldn't speak seemed calmer. I pushed them on swings, helped them climb, and promised I'd keep showing up. For the first time in 8 years, I believed things might actually work out. And that's it, another example of me talking too much.